Hi there to those that have just joined. Welcome to this Letting Go session hosted by War on Cancer. We're just going to wait for a couple of minutes just to give others an opportunity to join before we start. While we wait, it would be helpful just to make sure that you're in a room where you won't be disturbed for the next 40 minutes. Somewhere where you can sit comfortably and close your eyes. And while we wait, I just invite you to read the text in the chat that I posted. And it would be helpful for this session if you just start to think of a situation that you want to work on that's causing you stress this evening. It can be something big or small, something that's happening now, or something that happened in the past, or a future worry. So just start to consider what might be most helpful to you this evening. And listen to the music and relax. Thank you. Hi everybody, welcome to this session hosted by War on Cancer. My name's Amy and I'm delighted to be sharing the Letting Go technique with you this evening. This is one of the mental health sessions that War on Cancer host. I am a community member on the War on Cancer app. My name is Amy and on the app I go via the handle @carousel. This is a webinar format, so you guys don't have your video or audio on, so this is completely private. We are recording the session, as you might be able to see, but that's purely recording my audio and video. And if you need to contact me through this session, you can write to me directly in the chat. And also, if you want to write to me after this session, you can contact me via the War on Cancer app under the handle @carousel. So tonight we're going to be looking at psychologist David Hawkins' letting go technique. We're going to do a little bit on the theory, just so you have some context and understand a little bit about the theory of the practice. But most of this session, most of the 40 minutes will actually be dedicated to a practice. It's almost like a sort of guided meditation format. So let's take a look at the theory. there's a short presentation here that I will share with you. So Dr. David Hawkins, maybe some of you have read about him or heard of him before. He was an American psychiatrist. He was born in 1927. He was actually a psychiatrist and then became a psychologist. And then in his latter years, he called himself a researcher of consciousness. So he started in a very kind of medical psychology setting, working with very kind of clinical diagnoses like schizophrenia and clinical depression. And then in his middle years, he got more into the behavioral side of psychology, and he had a private practice in New York. So he has a very long and established career. He spent more than 50 years working as a psychologist in lots of different settings, which is why one of the reasons I really like him is that he's worked in so many different settings and seen so much. And in his lifetime, he's published 15 books. And he actually died in 2012. And Letting Go, The Pathway of Surrender, the book that we're looking at this evening, was his last book. There's a link to the book in the Zoom chat. So if you enjoy this session and you want to know more, I would really recommend this book. A lot of his fans say that because this is his last book, it's a really good one actually to start with, because it covers a lot of his work and is sort of a culmination actually of his whole career. And it is quite an amazing book. I thought we'd just talk a little bit about some of the theory that Hawkins covers in Letting Go, The Pathway of Surrender. And it's basically a book about emotions. And one of the things he talks about is the theory of emotions. So you'll see there on that slide, he's got a scale of emotions, starting at the ones that are more painful at the bottom, and then the ones that are more enjoyable at the top. And those values there, the numeric values, he actually deduced them through muscle testing, but that's his own scale really in terms of the numerical values. But it's good to have this context actually before we go into the practice, because you'll be asked to look into your mind at the types of feelings that you're having, and this can provide a good framework. So you'll see there at the bottom, there's shame, and then it goes up to guilt, apathy, grief, fear, desire, anger, pride. He calls those all quite difficult emotions. And the middle point, the value of 200, is actually courage. And Hawkins says that's kind of a tipping point. That's where the emotions start to get a little bit more positive and helpful. And he said that tapping into courage when we're going through something difficult can actually be really helpful. So then you've got courage, neutrality, willingness, acceptance, reason, love, joy, peace, and at the top, enlightenment. So it's helpful just to have that in mind just before we go into our practice. The other interesting thing that's worth sharing this evening, and will again give you a bit of context before we go into the practice, Hawkins talks about the typical coping strategies that we have available to us as humans when we go through something hard. So he talks about three things. He talks about suppression and repression. He talks about expression, and he talks about escape. So there's some examples there that we can talk about now. And you'll probably be familiar with some of these. As a human being, we all have our own kind of preferred coping strategies, and some of them might resonate and be more familiar to you than others. And actually, there's nothing wrong with any of these coping strategies. They're coping strategies because they help in the moment. They help us relieve stress or to make us feel better in some way. But what Hawkins found is that none of these coping strategies actually help long-term with our distress. And that's when he came up with the fourth opportunity for us, which is the letting go technique. But if we look at the kind of more typical human coping strategies, you'll see there suppression and repression. So that's when you knowingly or unknowingly kind of stuff a difficult feeling back down. And you might also minimize the situation, or maybe you project it and see it in something else or in another situation, or maybe you just deny that there's a problem. And, you know, with cancer, that could look like something like, oh, I'm okay because I've got a great medical team, or I'm okay because I've got a loving family, or my cancer's not as bad as Tom's down the road because his is stage 4, which are all sort of valid ways to buoy ourselves up and make us feel better. But actually they're also minimizing and kind of denying that we've got an issue, a problem, and they're kind of denying the suffering that we're feeling. The other strategy we have available is expression. So that could be when you share something with a friend or a therapist, or perhaps we might offload in a moment of distress. So that's when, you know, somebody might irritate you and then you sort of shout and kind of attack them a little bit. And it absolutely does relieve stress in the moment. That's why we do that. It does make us feel better, but it can have repercussions, because after that we might feel a little bit guilty afterwards, like we overreacted, or that person didn't quite deserve that because in fact we were upset about something that happened previously. And then sharing with a friend and therapist can be really helpful, absolutely, but we can also get very attached to our stories. And sometimes being very attached to your story, again, doesn't always help with the level of suffering that you're feeling. In fact, you can feel more distress the more attached you get to your narrative sometimes. And then the third option that Hawkins talks about in the book is escape. And that can be anything. I mean, we probably all do lots of different ways of doing this, but it's basically when you just try to keep busy and do anything but have time with your feelings. So maybe you throw yourself into work, or caring for others, or learning a new skill, or shopping, or exercising, or it's where kind of some of the substances might come in as well. Maybe we have a glass of wine, those sorts of things. So any sort of form of escape. And as I said previously, you know, we all use these and they can be helpful. But Hawkins found that they didn't really help his patients or himself in the longer term. And that's really where this letting go practice and technique comes in, because what we're doing here, we're actually relieving our suffering in the long term, not just helping ourselves out in the moment. So the letting go technique, Hawkins' research with his clinical patients with many different conditions and situations, he found that if we invite our difficult feelings into our awareness and allow them to run their course without judgment, we actually reduce the intensity of our difficult feelings and we experience less suffering. So whereas a lot of those normal coping strategies are around avoiding the emotion, doing the opposite, actually having a practice where you welcome or invite those difficult feelings into your awareness in a safe environment without judgment, actually alleviates distress. It sounds quite amazing, doesn't it? And it's quite different to what we might normally do. And I can absolutely attest from my own experience that this practice and technique actually really works, and it works better the more that you use it. So I'm a community member at War on Cancer because I had ovarian cancer. I had stage 4 ovarian cancer, and the doctors were very unsure about my prognosis and, you know, whether the treatment would work. I obviously had a lot of the traditional therapies, Western therapies. So I had surgery and chemotherapy, and I've had clear scans for 3 years. But I also really took the opportunity to sort of throw myself into the mental health side of things. I've studied psychology and I've worked in HR for most of my career with companies like Google. And so I'm really into mental health and spiritual health, actually. And I kind of, when I got diagnosed, I thought, wow, you know, there probably isn't a more difficult situation to be in, to test out some of the kind of psychology and spiritual tools that I had. But honestly, what I found was the tools that I'd learned up to that point weren't really helping me. I was experiencing huge amounts of fear, fear of death, fear of leaving my loved ones, fear of the uncertainty, anxiety, fear of my healthy body withering away, fear of a complete change of life from someone that was very healthy and had sort of lots of plans to having no idea about the future. And I couldn't sort of deny those feelings, honestly. It wasn't possible for me just to be positive. And actually, I found that the more positive I was, I had a downswing. I suddenly would go into real despair. Actually, I could sort of be positive for a while, and then the despair would come, and it was like a roller coaster. And I just thought, I can't be on this roller coaster anymore. So I need some tools, and this letting go technique is one of the practices that I found. So let's dive in. Let's have a go of the technique. I'm going to play some music as we go along, and if there's anything wrong with the sound quality or the volume, please let me know in the chat. That would be really helpful. Thank you. So take a minute just to get comfortable in your place. And just close your eyes. And you don't have to do anything during this practice except listen to my voice and just allow yourself to be guided. So start just by taking some deep breaths. It can be quite nice just to put a hand on your chest area and a hand on your tummy. And just feel the rise and fall of your chest and stomach. And just put your hands just on your knees. And you can keep your eyes closed. And now bring to mind the situation that's causing you distress that you want to work on this evening. It could be something that's happening now, or a worry or fear you have about the past, or a fear about the future. And just hold that situation in your mind. The trick here is not to ruminate on it. So the human mind is very good at problem solving and ruminating and thinking about things. But what we're looking to do here is just to hold that situation in your mind. You might extrapolate it into one sentence. So it could be fear of cancer returning would be an example. So just bring that situation to mind, but don't go anywhere with it. Just hold it in your mind. And now think about the primary emotion that's there surrounding that situation. What emotions are coming up for you about it? And just name them. Perhaps it's fear or grief or anger. And see if you can identify the primary emotion. So it'll be the one that feels more important, or it's just a more dominant feeling, or just the one that you choose to work on this evening. So just choose one of those emotions You can think back to Hawkins' scale of emotions, if that's helpful. Okay, so now you've got the situation in mind. You've identified the primary feeling or emotion. And now just invite that emotion into your awareness. And you do that just by saying to yourself, you can say it out loud or you can say it in your mind. I invite fear to rise into my awareness. Or I invite anger to rise into my awareness. And just do that. Just invite it up, that emotion. And you should feel a physical sensation somewhere on your body. We typically carry our difficult feelings, we can carry them somewhere in our body. So when you invite that emotion up, whether it's grief or fear, just see where you feel a bit of pressure, perhaps somewhere, perhaps in your chest area, or it can be in your head or your neck or your back. And then when you find out where it is on your body that you're feeling that emotion, when you invite that emotion into your awareness, just spend a moment just describing that sensation to yourself. What does it feel like? Does it feel like a pressure or a tightening? Or does it feel more like a fluttering? Or is it a sharper pain? So you're just holding that situation in your mind. You're identifying the emotion. You're inviting it up. You're seeing where you feel it on your body physically. And then you're describing that physical sensation to yourself. As a tightening in my chest, for example. And it can feel quite intense. It can feel quite unusual to do this because normally we avoid our feelings. So it can feel a little bit unusual and intense. But just know this is a very safe practice. It's okay to invite your emotions up in this way, and it's completely safe. And if you were to compare that physical sensation to a migraine or a backache, it's actually reasonably mild. So you can just reassure yourself. And you can use your breath here as well, because it can start to feel a bit intense, you know, that pressure, for example, in your chest. So I also invite you just to keep taking some deep breaths as you do this. It can be helpful. And you might also want to move your body a little bit. You might want to reach out like this or have a little shake or something, just to keep being able to be with that emotion and, you know, making a bit of space for it, actually, almost. And this is Hawkins' technique. So he's teaching us to be with the emotion, to invite it up. So I'm just going to play a little bit of music just for a few minutes while we just keep doing that. So you're just keeping inviting up that emotion in your mind by literally saying, you know, this emotion is welcome here now. I invite fear into my awareness. I invite fear into my awareness. And then you focus your mind on the physical sensation, and perhaps that physical sensation starts to get more intense, and you take some deep breaths and you might move a little bit, and you just keep inviting that emotion up. And you can say to yourself, you know, wow, this is how I feel fear. This is what fear feels like to me. And just keep inviting it up. And your only job here in these moments is just to be with it and just keep inviting it up. That's it. So I'll just put some music on now for a few minutes. Just hold that situation in mind that's causing you distress. Identifying the emotion, inviting it up. You're checking in with your body and seeing where you're feeling that tension, that emotion on your body. It might be your throat, chest. Describe that situation to yourself. Feel free to move your body a little bit. Take some deep breaths. Have a drink of water if you need to. And just keep inviting that emotion up. Feel that physically in your body. And say to yourself, wow, this is how I feel fear. Or this is what grief feels like to me. And I'll give you a couple of minutes now of just silence while you just go through that practice in your own mind. Just keep inviting it up. And your job here is just to be with that emotion, just to be as close to it as you can be. And there can be the desire or the need to run away, because it's quite unusual to be doing this. So it can feel a bit strange at first and a little bit threatening, honestly. But just know it's a very safe practice. It's very safe to invite your emotions up in this way and to be with them. It's okay to feel these physical sensations that you're feeling. And you can just keep inviting it up. And just keep your mind very focused on that invitation. And you can keep your mind very focused on the physical sensation as well. It's a great place to direct your mind to, so it's not ruminating and going off trying to problem solve anything. You're simply just allowing the emotions to come up. And it can start to feel intense. You might start to have other physical sensations. Perhaps you start to feel hot, or you might start to sweat, or you can even start to shake, or you might start to cry. And it's all to be welcomed. It's all part of the release. Maybe this is one of the first times that you've given this much attention to a difficult feeling situation. And just take some deep breaths. And it does take a lot of courage to do this practice, to learn a new way to handle difficulty. And you might see if any visual experiences come to you. When I was ill, I worked a lot on fear, actually. Fear was a really big, difficult emotion for me. I had a lot of fear. And when I started doing this practice and reading Hawkins' book, I realised that I'd always denied fear. I'd always closed the door on fear and pretended it wasn't there, kept busy, had a plan that was going to solve the problem. Did a lot of things to avoid the fear. And when I was doing this practice, I had this like visual experience of like a homeless man kind of coming to the door and like knocking on the door, and he was really disheveled and, you know, very, having a lot of difficulty, very distressed. And he was my sort of the embodiment of fear, if you like. It was like fear knocking on my door, and I'd spent all these years slamming the door, like, no, you're not welcome here. And with this practice, I've got the courage to start to open the door, and then like even welcoming him in. And I had this little scene where I used to like welcome him in, like, oh, fear, here you are. This is what fear feels like to me. You're welcome here. And I'd bring him in and I'd sit him by the fire in a really comfy chair and put a nice fire on, and he'd like take his shoes off. And I was like, you're welcome here now. And it was a very like amazing experience to do that. So I invite you now just to see whatever emotion it is that's coming up for you, just to see if there's any sort of visual or auditory or kinesthetic or kind of sensory experience that you can kind of create in your mind to invite and welcome this feeling in. And I'll give you a couple of minutes just to do that now. And when you're doing this practice, this part of the practice, you can spend as much time as you could bear on, honestly, and just keep being with that emotion and just keep inviting it up. That's really what a lot of this practice is. And I've spent hours and hours and hours and days and days and days working on the same situation or different situation, but the same emotion. Just whatever was coming up for me, this became a really dedicated practice that I would do daily. And I had some amazing benefits with it, and like overall fear seemed to reduce for me. So an example would be that I used to be quite scared of worms and have like a real visceral reaction to a worm. And after doing this practice a lot, you know, when I see a worm now, I don't have that fear reaction. It's quite amazing. I can garden more now and be with worms and not have such a scared reaction, just from doing this practice and releasing fear in other ways, in other situations. And Hawkins says that perhaps when we come into a difficult encounter like cancer, it's actually an opportunity because we're brought face to face with our fear or grief or anger. But maybe that emotion's coming into our awareness so that we can heal it, so we can invite it up and release it. Perhaps it does have a purpose, and perhaps we can experience more peace from doing this practice. And I just invite you now just to check and see if there's any other emotions attached to that same situation. Sometimes behind anger, for example, is fear or grief. So there can be more than one emotion attached to a situation. So I invite you now just to look at that and just see if there's any other emotions there that are coming up for you. And then just to do that same practice again, if you do identify another emotion, just see where you feel it on your body. Perhaps you feel it in the same place or perhaps somewhere different. Just invite it up. See where you feel it. Describe that situation, that physical sensation to yourself. And just keep inviting it up and do the same practice again. And if you don't have another emotion, just spend a minute just working again on that original primary emotion. Just invite it up again, feel it again. Just kind of get a little bit used to doing this practice. And we're coming to the last part of this session now. And I'll just share with you how to kind of let go of the situation and emotion a little bit more, how you kind of end a practice. So you can say to yourself, and this is all done in your mind, this entire practice is done in your mind. It's amazing that there's no need to share it with anybody. So you can be very honest with yourself about your suffering. You don't have to modify it or worry about anybody else's feelings. Something that you can be very honest with yourself about. And you're the best guide as well. You know your suffering. You know what your pain points are. And so what you can do now is just say to yourself, I let this situation go. And just say that and see what reaction you get. So if you say, I let this emotion go, or I let this situation go, and just see if you get a yes or no response in your body or in your mind. So say to yourself, I let this situation go. And perhaps you get a no, like, no way. I'm not ready to let this situation go. And that's absolutely fine. There's no right or wrong here. And, we can spend lots of time and lots of sittings doing this practice on one particular situation. And over time, you kind of lessen it, but it's absolutely fine to get a no response. And maybe you get a yes, I can let this feeling go. And if you get a no response, which is very common, or even an I don't know, which is fine as well, if it's not that clear to you, that can take a bit of practice as well. Hawkins encourages us to see if there's elements of the situation that we can let go of. And this is so clever, actually. I love this bit of his technique. And he sets up like very practical, simple things that we can let go of about the situation. So I'll give you an example. If say it's anger and you're angry with someone, you can't let go of your anger towards that person and the situation. You've been really hurt, and there's no way you can let that go. But you look for what you can let go of. So you kind of create these scenarios in your mind. So can I let go of punching the wall? Can I let go of punching the wall now? Yeah, I can let go of that. can I let go of sending an angry text? And if you get a no response to that, maybe it's, can I let go of sending an angry text now? Yeah, I can let go of that. And you just feel yourself relax. And he gave another example of a guy that had been made redundant and was very upset about it and couldn't let that situation go. But he could let go of having to get the train to work the next day. Could he let go of having to sit at his desk again? Could he let go of going to that same sandwich shop and buying his sandwich? Yeah, I can let go of that. So it's amazing how he kind of came up with these very practical, simple, that seem really insignificant sort of things, but they're actually elements of the situation you can let go of. The other great one is, can I let go of resolving this situation now? Yeah, I can let go of that. So I'll give you a minute just to come up with some small elements of your situation that you can let go of. And then just when you find something you can let go of, just feel that little release. Yeah, I can let go of that. I can let go of punching the wall now. And if you struggle to come up with something, another one you can use is, I let go of the need to resist the feeling around it. So you can say that to yourself, I let go of the need to resist the emotion of fear. And then just feel the fear just pop up again and just invite it up. Let go of the need to resist the fear. That's a letting go in itself. And then you realize that, the whole practice is a letting go of resistance. You're just letting go of the need to resist those feelings. That's a letting go. I let go of the need to resist that emotion. And you just feel a little bit of a relax then as well, right? And it absolutely can feel intense, this practice. I know that from my own experience. It doesn't feel comfortable. It's not nice. Lots of people that I work with don't enjoy this, but they do feel the benefits of it. And the more they do it, the more they get kind of comfortable with their discomfort, and they know it's not going to hurt them. And actually they start to appreciate that this is a clearing out. It's a clearing out from the consciousness and the subconscious as well, of kind of difficult feelings, grief, guilt, shame. And it's very amazing to start to release, and you start to feel lighter. And Hawkins says that if we don't release some of these difficult feelings, we don't really have room for the more enjoyable emotions of peace or neutrality, for example, because we're always putting a lid on the shame or the guilt. And it takes a lot of effort to hold all that down. So as we end this practice, I just share a little technique that I use just to end the practice. So I like to blow up a pretend balloon. So if you just close your eyes, just take a deflated balloon and just blow into it, and just imagine blowing all that stuff that you've been able to let go of tonight into that balloon. Just do it in a few breaths as you just blow up that balloon. Do it with some really long, deep breaths. And then keep your eyes closed and just hold that balloon now. It's on the end of a string. And just unclasp your hand. And just let go of that balloon. And you just watch it float over the horizon in your mind. And thank you so much for joining this evening. it really does take a lot of courage to try this practice honestly, and to dedicate time for it, and to even join these kind of sessions really takes a lot of courage. So I just would encourage you now just to end just by thanking yourself, actually thanking yourself for having the courage to do this tonight. And you can still carry some of those physical sensations with you for the next 24 hours, actually. Like, you've probably potentially let up quite a lot of stuff. And I encourage you just to keep going with the healing. So, like, drink some water. Maybe you want to play some relaxing music, whatever that is to you. And just maybe sort of have a stretch as well, like shake wherever it was that you're feeling a little bit of the tension, shake that out. I often feel it in my heart area, so I often have a little sort of shake here in my chest area. Yeah, and the healing that you've given yourself will continue for the next kind of 24 hours. So yeah, just be aware of that, and drink some water, have a dance, play some music, have a kind of release. Yeah, and I hope you found it beneficial. I'm just going to end with a song for anybody that wants to stay. Please do. I'll just put some music on, and thank you so much for joining this evening. Thank you so much, everyone. Hope you enjoyed the session, and thank you for joining. Bye-bye.